Hey, everybody, it's Andy with My Side of the Fence podcast. It has indeed been a while, but I had the crud that was going around, and then, I just got busy with life. But it's the week of Christmas, and I am here with Sara Brescia from the Manassas City Schools.
Hello, yes, it's me. I'm back.
It's me again.
It's me again.
There have been recently some changes in what's it called exactly, Sara?
So schools used to be accredited or not. So it's accreditation. Slide this way.
There you go. A little bit closer.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Accreditation.
So schools used to be accredited or not. Now it's a new accountability system where accreditation and the school's performance, like how the kids are actually doing, these are now separate things. So I figured I might come on and help the city understand a little bit about what this new system is and how our schools did over the past school year.
Right. So the state will occasionally, like once every other year, pass legislation. Like I remember back, I was say 8, 10 years ago, they passed legislation that said we needed financial literacy or something.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. And it's just another bolt on.
Yeah. I mean, there's always the state's always the wild card in terms of what they're going to be requiring or not. The state has thrown a few wild cards in the direction of public schools lately. One of this is the new accreditation system / the new performance system, the new accountability system. The other one is they mandated that schools change their reading curriculum. And that is not, it's easy to say that, but it's harder to actually do it.
Right.
And they changed there were a lot of changes. So they had all states in the Commonwealth had to choose one of 3 phonics-based reading curricula, which I think was ultimately the right thing to do, even though it was a difficult thing to do. The SOL tests became 30 to 40% harder because the Youngkin Virginia Department of Education, and that's their own estimate, by the way. That's not like
how did they become harder?
So instead of the contention, what the argument is, or how they're describing it is, instead of having it be a test that you can pass based on memorization or knowledge of simple facts, you have to use higher order thinking and reasoning to get to the correct answer.
There's less teaching to the test.
Yes, and so now you are you have to use higher order thinking. So it's by the VDOE's own estimate, the test was the past school year 30 to 40% harder to pass. Now coming up in the future, this was not in effect for last school year, but over the next 4 years, unless something changes, which is always we have a brand new session starting and a brand new governor coming in, so who knows, things can change. But it will be coming into effect that the score needed to pass, to be considered passing on the SOL, that's going to start gradually going up. So you will need to answer more questions correctly to be considered passing. And the reason that they did that was because Virginia had an unusually large, they called it the honesty gap between how the national report card, all students in the United States takes that NAEP, National Report Card exam, and the Virginia SOL scores were not very tightly correlated with that. So that was the idea of fixing those SOL cuts, they're called cut scores, to bring us closer to that national report card so that our students, we could get a better benchmark of how Virginia students were doing relative to, Maryland students, Iowa students.
Right.
Stuff. So that was the theory behind that. But that is something that will be phased in over the next 4 years. So 4 years is a long time. A lot can change, but one of the things I am planning to ask for and that I hope we get from our own administration is I would like to have it modeled out for us, like assuming our SOL scores stay exactly the same, how would our pass rates be impacted? I'd be curious to see that kind of gamed out for us because we are going to be in a position where we're going to need to be upping our game a little bit to get the same kind of pass rates that we're getting now.
Hold on a minute, everybody.
Andy says, hold on a minute.
I had to turn that fan off. All I could hear was that. So that's going to be 4 years in the making. So do we anticipate that how we educate kids adapts over the next 4 years to that thing?
You're constantly adapting, constantly. Having to change our reading curriculum was a huge adaptation, huge, especially at the elementary level. Usually when you are changing curriculum and when you change SOL standards, usually they give you what's called a crosswalk year, where we'll test you on the old standards while you phase in the new way of teaching. But they didn't do that. It's like, no, you're going to get the new tests, which are harder, and you have the new curriculum, which is very, very different from what you've been teaching before. And you're all going to do it in the space of a single year.
It's just like cats rearranging the litter box. I mean, I sit some weekends with a group called the Cattlemen. And there are some numbers of guys in that group. They're like, I don't understand why they can't teach reading and writing just like they did like when I was a kid, and you sound out the words. And is it just more complicated now?
No, I mean, reading has gone on an interesting journey, an interesting pedagogical, whatever that word is, an interesting journey into how you change it and how you teach it. And there's actually a whole bunch of if you Google the reading wars, this is actually something that is very fascinating to see how this took shape across the country. And it all kind of had its origin when No Child Left Behind was coming into shape in the early 2000s. People don't realize this, but George W. Bush, his brother was dyslexic. And so he actually, literacy was very important, not just to him, but if you remember Barbara Bush, when she was the first lady, that was her big initiative.
So is this the big phonics versus everybody else fight?
Phonics versus everybody else. And phonics has, phonics is science-based. You will learn to read. If you learn phonics, you will learn to read.
Right.
If you learn to read any other way, you may or may not learn to read. But how that developed across the country, because it was associated with No Child Left Behind, because it was associated with the Bush family, there were various backlashes to it for that reason. Phonics is also, it's super boring. It just is.
But it works.
But it works.
Because it's fun, because like my daughter graduated from high school in 15. And I well remember her coming home from school and us working with her on like how to read and stuff like that. And, Sarah and I graduated from high school in 84. Mm-hmm. So it was always sounded out.
Yeah.
She had this New World methodology, and we're like, no, not that. Sound it out. Yeah. So there's always this sort of thing. Parents teaching children anything is always dicey.
Yes. Well, what the state did, and this is kind of gaining steam now, and I don't know how much you've read about the state of Mississippi, but the state of Mississippi has improved tremendously. They've gone from like number 49 in the country to like number 24 in the country, and if you adjust for demographics, they're something like number 10 in the country.
Damn.
Huge Mississippi miracle. Go ahead and Google that.
I have read something about that.
Yeah, and part of their secret sauce for success has been this phonics-based instruction, and so state legislatures all over the country have been modeling what Mississippi has done, which is what was the Virginia Literacy Act that had us change our reading curriculum. Not that we did have phonics elements before. I'm not saying like we weren't like all the way, there were some reading curricula where it was literally like, I'm going to cover the word and you're going to have to guess based on the picture what it is. That's not learning. You know what I mean? We weren't
context.
Like we've always had blending. We've always had sound, as long as I've been on the board, we've always had blending and sounded out and all that kind of stuff. But this is a highly, highly structured kind of curriculum, and the state picked 3. Every school division in the Commonwealth had to pick one of those 3. We chose Benchmark Advance, which Fairfax County also chose. The county is doing a different one. I'm not aware of any of I'm not aware of any neighboring divisions who've done the 3rd one, but the state was like, no, you have 3. You have to pick from these 3.
Did you ask, why didn't the state just say thou shalt?
Well, that's what
Here's number 3. This is what you're doing.
Well, there are differences in terms of, you don't want to take away. I don't know. I can't speak for the state, but I could imagine them being like, you're going to have a choice among these 3, with the theory being, local needs will vary. If you have
some demos are different.
Right. If you have a high English learner population, I remember that was part of why Benchmark Advance was recommended for Manassas City Public Schools, was that their English learner resources were greater than the resources available in the other 2. And obviously that's the concern for us. But if you're in Tazewell County, that might not be. So it's
now you go.
And you might have a different set of issues in Tazewell County that will be of,
You will.
right. That one of the other two would be a better match for you. So I don't know.
So I've seen on social media various reports or various posts from people, usually elected officials, but other people that are involved with the schools, about our results in that new system. Those are results for the new system,
The
right?
new system. So the 24-25 school year was evaluated under the new system. And so that's part of why I wanted to come up here, because it is confusing.
Right, because I see some people post this a graphic. It's a screenshot, probably out of a report or something, that says like all of our schools are accredited, and then I see other people post all of our schools are accredited, but then there's another part that's below the fully accredited. The fully accredited stuff, I guess, is the happy news, but down below it's like on track, off track, off track, needs serious remediation or something like that.
It's distinguished. On track, off track, needs intensive support are the four.
Right. So, but some of our schools that need intensive support, which seems bad, are still fully accredited. That seems like I have a bit of an intellectual fugue there.
It is. I wish that they had chosen another word aside from accredited, because we have been using this terminology in a different way for so long that now people have to completely reroute the wires in their brain in terms of how to think of this. So accreditation used to, and what you are probably thinking of when you hear something like, all schools are fully accredited, is that student achievement is baked into that. And that's no longer the case. It used to be that student achievement was baked into that determination. But they took student achievement, they took chronic absenteeism, they took graduation rates, they took all of that out of accreditation. So now accreditation is an operational judgment, like, do you have the correct class sizes? Do you have
the heat works?
Right. Are your buildings up to code? Do you do you meet the minimum staffing standards? Are all your teachers licensed the way they're supposed to be licensed?
Right.
And it is an accomplishment. I don't want to say it's not an accomplishment. It is an accomplishment that we are fully accredited. There is not a single high school in Prince William County that is fully accredited. Every single high school in Prince William County is conditionally accredited because they are not offering a certain certificate for CTE completers. And that's one of the things, like, you have to offer an advanced diploma, standard diploma, and various other opportunities for certificates and stuff like that. And there's one that Prince William County does not offer that earned every single high school over their conditionally accredited mark. So we are officially beating Prince William County on our operational compliance, which is good news. It is good news. Like, there's not that it's not worth celebrating.
Sure.
But if what most people are thinking about and what most people are curious about is how are the kids doing? What's your student achievement look like? And that is now the state assigns a performance category for you in terms of how your students are doing. And those are distinguished, on track, off track, and needs intensive support. And it's not, that system is, as we can talk a little bit more, it's a little bit strange. We have 2 schools that are needs intensive support, 5 schools that are off track, and 2 schools that are on track. The 2 schools that need intensive support are actually doing better than 2 of our off-track schools for kind of like technical reasons. It's strange how it kind of works out in the final analysis. The main kind of curveball for why that is happening, that we have 2 off-track schools that are performing worse than our needs intensive support schools. You can, in this new system, be bumped down a category if you have student subgroups that are underperforming. So we had the 2 needs intensive support schools, their test scores, their chronic absence, their everything else was in the off-track category. But because in the case of Dean, they had subgroups of students, their students with disabilities and their English learner students had too large of an achievement gap. So they were taken out of off track and put into needs intensive support. And Baldwin Intermediate, which is a 240 student school with very, very small groups of students can really can really swing that school very hard one direction or another. Their students with disabilities at Baldwin Intermediate also had an unacceptably large achievement gap. So Baldwin Intermediate went from simply off track to needs intensive support. But their SOL scores, their chronic absence, basically everything else was in the off track category, which is still not good, but it's not as bad as needs intensive support. Meanwhile, the student achievement at METS was the second worst in the division. But the good news at METS was they did not have any subgroups that were a problem for them. And the year before last year, they had a very long list of subgroups that were a problem. They had issues with economically disadvantaged students, Hispanic students, Black students, the very students with disabilities. Basically, all in 23, 24, if you were in a subgroup, you were in trouble.
You're in trouble.
METS middle school.
Right.
The good news out of METS is that they fixed that. The achievement gaps were gone in 24, 25. So instead of being needs intensive support, they were off track. And Round Elementary School, it was in absolute terms our worst performing school, which was a huge shock to everybody. I know that because that had not been the case for them for a long time.
Right.
They are not needs intensive support. They have a different federal designation, a comprehensive support and improved. They're a CSI school, comprehensive support and improvement school, and you earn that CSI designation if you are in the bottom 5% of Title I elementary schools in your state. And that is unfortunately where they found themselves last year, as of last year. It's strange that we're having this conversation in late December. Usually these results come out in August or September. Because the system was new, and frankly, to be a little bit rushed, because the system was new and implemented on this extremely accelerated timeline, the state needed additional time to collect and validate all of the data so that when it did come out, it was accurate. And so that's why it took so long. Usually we would be able to have this conversation several months ago.
Right.
And I already have encountered actually quite a bit of confusion out there with parents getting in touch with me about Round in particular, being like, oh, well, it's because of XYZ things that were happening this school year. But this CSI designation is not about this school year. This CSI designation is about last year.
School year. Uh-huh.
All of this that we're talking about is about the last school year.
So are the one that's in the bottom 5%, that's Round?
Round is in the bottom 5% of Title I elementary schools. I know, yeah. It was a big, I sent out a newsletter. I described it as a major collapse. I mean, and there's no other way. I'm not trying to be inflammatory to say that. There's no other, there's no other way to say it, is that I actually had a chart here because even though this new system was only in effect for this year, the state released as a benchmark what your estimated score would have been for 2 school years ago. And Round went from a score of 84, which was our highest score out of the entire division in the 23-24 school year, down to a score of 70 in 24-25. And to be clear to everybody, to a score of 70, if Round had gotten a score of 69, if you've got a score in the 60s, that's a needs intensive support threshold. So they went from 84 down to 70. And that was a huge deal. But I do want to make sure, I want to give some credit here, because Osborne went from a 73 in 23-24, their estimated score under this framework. Right. They're all the way up to an 82.
Well, that's good.
Now. And they've gained 10 points alone in their math achievement. So Osborne has, they got to keep working. It's not like, okay, everybody put your feet up, mission accomplished. At Osborne, there's still a lot to do that we still don't have enough kids there passing their tests. We have kids there who are capable of passing tests, especially on their first or second attempts, that are still taking too long. Because in high school, you can take the SOL exam basically as many times as you need in order to graduate. But the first 2 scores are the only ones that count for the school's purposes.
I see.
Their chronic absence improved, but it's still over 30%. So It improved. Okay, it did improve. It's still, but he's making a face. I know we're on
What?
the radio
Hold
here.
on a minute.
Let's make the face. Let's
What?
verbalize the face.
A third of the children don't show up?
Yes. Yeah.
Why don't you
yes.
just cut them loose?
Well, I mean, that implicate that first of all, it's not really good for the kids to just cut them loose. Like, we want the kids to come and get their high school diplomas. And, from a strictly mathematical point of view, you don't want to let too many kids loose because now your graduation rate is going to tank. Like, these are kids who the children of Osborne are capable of coming.
It's the triumph of hope over experience.
I
mean, realistically, so you have a third of those kids, right?
Yeah.
Realistically, what percentage of those kids, of that 33%, are you going to capture?
I don't think
maybe that's the wrong word, but are you going to get back into the system so that, like, they can graduate?
So we're talking about a chronic absence rate. So a lot of these individuals who become chronically absent do complete enough coursework and pass their SOL exams in time to graduate. Like, our on-time graduation rate at Osborne, I don't have the exact number in my head, but it's high. It's it's up there. It's in the 90s.
Oh.
So, yes.
So what you're saying is these kids don't come to school, but it's okay because they're smart enough or whatever.
Well, I'm not saying it's okay. Don't miss me up.
But they graduate.
They do graduate.
That's
so,
right.
So I don't want to leave you with an impression that the kids are not able to complete their credits and pass their exams eventually and graduate. It's just that it's obviously better for them, it increases their odds of passing their exam on their first or second attempt if they are there every single day.
I tried this not going to a third of my classes when I was in college, and I had adverse results.
Yes, right. Well, this is where we talked about it last time. We don't have to talk about it this time, but I do think the grading policy comes into effect there a little bit. Osborne also has... they had all of these processes put in together, in terms of what they were going to be doing and how they were going to be addressing it. And then one of their key players, on the administrative team, took an extended family leave because of a chronic and unexpected illness. And, we have a small enough system that something like that happens.
Right.
And now you're kind of, by the time you've filled the gap and moved people around and stuff like that, things are...
It's hard in a small team to do that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, our office managers had the flu for 2 weeks.
And
it's like I'm living in, the woods or something. And people are calling up. They're like, well, when is it showing up? And I don't know.
Right. And so we need to work harder. The chronic absence rate is still too high, but despite the headwinds that they were facing with their staffing in terms of those key positions for those attendance positions, they still did reduce it a few percentage points. So there's that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens now this year, although apparently we had an interruption with the cybersecurity incident. A lot of our automated telephone calls that go to our families, did you know your child wasn't in their first block class?
Right.
Those were disrupted. I don't know, and I need to follow up on this, whether those are back online, but for a period of time, they were offline, and it didn't take the kids long at all to figure it out. To figure that out. So we did have a resurgence this fall of the young people figuring out, maybe I can.
Like they do.
Maybe I can get away with it. But one thing I also hope and anticipate will have some impact on whether our kids stay in the building is that now the Osborne campus is one campus, the Johnson Learning Center, and the main building have now been connected. They are now connected with a hallway, so the students no longer have to go outside if you have a class in either building. So there's no longer any excuse at all, if you are an Osborne student, for you to be outside those four walls.
I see them in Old Town.
They are out there, but now it's, it makes things a little bit... in terms of securing the perimeter of the school, it does make things a little bit.
Well, it's
easier.
important to do that in any event, right?
Right.
So back to the system, so the accreditation part, and that's going to be I don't envy you explaining that to people, because when people see that, they're like, oh, well, the schools are doing okay.
And it's fun. And explaining it is funny because it's like, yes, it is good news because not everybody made it. Like we did beat Prince William, and I want everybody to know that we did beat Prince William on the accreditation metric.
Right.
Unfortunately, it doesn't include student achievement. If you're looking at student achievement, it's actually very interesting how this system. How the system kind of shook out. Like I said, Osborne went from a 73 up to an 82. They're now and they didn't have any issues with any of their subgroups, so they are an on-track high school. That's just breaking news, everybody. Okay, Osborne High School is an on-track high school. This is the first positive state report that Osborne has received in years. So this is great, and I hope that we are able to build on that momentum because it's a score of 82. It's not a score of 89. It's not
Right.
And heck, let's keep going. Let's go to distinguished. The distinguished cutoff is at 90. Like, let's keep going. Let's keep pressing.
You and I've had this discussion before. If the city schools were simply average, the city, it becomes a much less affordable place to live.
Well, we have an average. We have an on track. We have an average high school. Put the word out there, and we also have the #1 most improved school in reading in all of Northern Virginia, and that is Weems Elementary School, and they are also on track.
Wow.
There's something like 25 available points because this is a point system. This new accreditation, this new accountability system. There's something like 25 points available for growth, and Weems earned like 24.7 of them or something like that.
That's pretty good.
And they were the #1 elementary school for reading growth. And so it is really something, and they are also on track. And so that's great. They also have a score of 82.
Right.
And they went from a score of 71 previously.
Damn. So how much different, other than the functional aspects where accreditation doesn't have anything to do with students, did the board, did the results generally, like, were they pretty much what you expected, or you were kind of like, what happened here?
So Andy Harover, I cannot speak on behalf of the school.
Yeah, of course you can. I know. But I mean, just the sense.
In terms of what my
but the sense in the room, I guess.
The sense in the room, based on my interpretation.
Right. Only for yourself. Yep.
I was optimistic about Osborne because a lot of very good and positive changes have been unfolding over there with Dr. Chapman. She's really, I told you last time the story about the young man running so that he didn't make the tardy bell, right? Like it's, there's a lot of, she's had a lot of good things going over there in terms of making the building more orderly and trying to get her attendance pieces in line. Also, she's been working really hard, and you can really see the difference. Like my time as a board member going to visit Osborne 3 years ago versus going to visit Osborne now, huge positive difference. So I'm truly not surprised. And also, this new system gives a lot of weight to things that Osborne was already doing well, like the readiness. As a high school, you get. Under the system, you get points for readiness for kids who take the ASVAB exam, for kids who are CTE completers, for kids who graduate on time, and all these things that we were already doing pretty well with. So even though our test scores are still, our chronic absence is still higher than I'd like it to be, and our test scores are still lower than where I'd like it to be, Osborne was already kind of a heavy hitter in its preparedness category.
Right.
And so now the state is giving that more weight, and so that is part of of Osborne's success stories, that they're being recognized for things that they were doing well on already, and that other things are moving in a positive direction. Like I said, their math scores improved by 10 points in a single year, and that's pretty good. So there's still more work to do, but the momentum there is positive. I was not surprised at all to see that Weems was on track. And do you know why I wasn't surprised at all? I don't think I got a single email out of Weems last year as a school board member. And, there's always, you as a former city council member, nobody ever emails you to see like, Mr. Council Member,
you're doing a great job.
Everything is great, right? Silence is golden, right? If you're not hearing anything. Yeah. Actually, the principal of Weems was our principal of the year, was recognized as our principal of the year last year. And so to see to see their huge growth in reading, right? It actually really didn't surprise me. What did surprise me and there's some, like I said, there's some little quirks in the system, and who knows what's going to happen to it over the next 4 years
Yeah.
as the Commonwealth turns a page. So who knows what's going to happen? But it is interesting. Baldwin Elementary School actually has higher overall SOL scores than Weems does, but because, and you're making a face again, so I'll explain. They didn't get as much in the growth category. They didn't improve as much. So to go from 60 to 65 is, so even though that 65 might be higher, and I'm just making these numbers,
Sure.
that 65 might be higher than the 60 they got at Weems, but because Weems went from 20 to 60, they get more points for that.
Right.
And it is, and I'm sure you are familiar with this as a business owner, that low-hanging fruit is low-hanging and easy.
That's where you go for it.
And you can move pretty quickly if everything is falling into place for the first, 30 points or whatever it is. But once you're at a sort of comfortable point to push and get higher.
It's harder.
Yeah, the last 5 points are harder to get than the first 20 points, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
And so Baldwin did not have enough mastery points to become on track, but they didn't have as the dramatic growth points that Weems had, even though overall, like if you average the scores, the Baldwin average is higher than the Weems average. We also have some quirks in our system. Because our elementary schools stop in 4th grade, we do not administer a science exam, which means, because that's a 5th grade test.
Oh.
So
that makes sense.
The 5th grade, so the science exams count for Mayfield and Baldwin Intermediate, but they do not count for elementary schools. And there is no weighting for that. Like the state doesn't. They just classify you as elementary, and then you are put into the same pot of points as schools who have a 3rd test, or here comes the train.
It's Manassas.
It's Manassas. But so our reading exams and our math exams at our elementary schools carry more weight than they do over in the county or over in Fairfax, where they go K to 6, because we don't have it. We're not splitting up those points. We don't get to count science.
So is that like a structural disadvantage for our kids? It is.
We are structurally disadvantaged. Well, I mean, I think the kids are disadvantaged by our having so many grade levels and having so many transitions, but the city is disadvantaged by it because now people are getting, they're not able to really compare elementary schools accurately across jurisdictions, because we could be, because we don't have a 3rd test to add to the point total. And so that is going to make any of our elementary schools harder to get to the on track. And I worry actually a little bit about Weems. The first 20 points are easy. And now I'm a little worried that they're going to fall into the Baldwin trap for this school year, where how much can you improve enough now in absolute terms to cross that mastery threshold without the science test points to help you do it. And you're going to go from on track to off track, even though the school is still improving.
Well, there's no way you're going to be able to push all those 5th graders back into elementary school.
Well, I mean, this is something that actually the board, in connection with Jenny Dean Elementary School, the new Jenny Dean is coming online soon.
You can just use the old one for this.
Don't even get me started on that building, Andy. Not allowed.
But I mean, you can't just push those 5th graders back into elementary. We don't have the way to do that, do we?
Well, we do not have the capacity to study it. Right. If you are in a very large system like Fairfax or Prince William, you have whole teams of administrators in your central office who are demographically modeling and facility studying and doing all of these things all of the time in a full-time capacity. we barely, we almost, we have a new school that we redo every 10 years, right? So we don't have, it doesn't make sense for us to have those offices that other school divisions do full of the people who do this all the time. So we have to hire someone to study our facilities and, do our enrollment projections and all that other kind of stuff to see what a solution might be. Because, I mean, there are, there's lots of little quirks, and we as a city, we are sensitive to, we're more sensitive than average to, for example, national immigration policy. You can actually see it if you look at our demographic data. You can actually see Trump's first administration. You can actually see Trump won in our demographic data between 2016 and 2020. And we, the school board, have seen our enrollment, our current enrollment, and
how it falls.
The city will soon see it shortly, because this is going to be part of our budget discussion. But our kindergarten classes this year were much smaller than they were previously, and that is that's a few things. It's not just immigration; it's also instability in the federal workforce and people moving not just out of Manassas but out of the DC area.
But it's got to be immigration. It's got to be the number.
Well, I mean, I don't know that there's a way for us even to necessarily know that, but there has been a few things, and birth rates have fallen. They fell. If you are a kindergartner now, you were born in 2020. And your parents were probably already pregnant with you when the pandemic started. And I know this because I have a July 2020 baby, and I was already pregnant with her when the time,
Right.
So, but after COVID, there was a big, a big birth rate collapse. And actually, when I was on the board of directors of the private preschool here in the city, we could feel it, because the private preschools, we only served 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and when those post-COVID 3-year-olds did not show up, that was a real problem for us. And we were literally calling other preschools, being like, "Do you
What's
have
going
kids?
on here?
Do you have kids? We don't have kids. Do you have kids?" And my husband, as part of his job, he studies demographics. He's like, "The kids are not there. They're just not there. They were never born." And the birth rates recovered a little bit, but they didn't. But we have not yet achieved our pre-COVID fertility. So there is 3 things that are kind of pulling down Manassas City enrollment. And so what that means and how you manage that through the system, and also who knows, I have a pretty reasonable guess what immigration's policy is going to be through 2020, through 2028. But I don't know what it's going to be in 2029. I don't know what it's going to be in 2030. And so how you as a school system plan for that, I don't know.
I don't feel like we've had a ton of direct action in the city by immigration. But, there's definitely a knock-on chilling effect for sure. And, if you're seeing it in pre-K, and there it is. Yeah.
I mean, so it is something that we're going to have to think about, but it's something, luckily, because we were going to think about it anyway, because we have a 900-seat elementary school that's coming online next school year. So it's like, okay, is this the correct? Is this the correct usage of? I mean, the school's being built as an elementary school, so that school will be an elementary school. But let's look at all of our.
Just have to move the water fountains up a little bit.
Well, let's look at everybody else. And, Hayden and Weems have historically been a little bit more, they're not overcrowded, but they're pretty full. So it's like, okay, can we help out Hayden or Weems by balancing out a little bit? Nobody wants to hear a school board member say that big, redistrict word or anything like that. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen.
That's radioactive.
No, but we might get but this is something that has been.
I just have to figure it out.
That's been kind of like stewing in the background of like, okay, well, we're going to have to think about it. So and we might have a study come back and say everything's fine and keep it the way it is. But I personally do not think making our students go to 4 schools between the ages of 10 and 14 serves them very well.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
Yeah, no, I agree.
and there are actually studies on this. And I was actually somewhat amused to hear. I went to the E3 series that the police have, for parents to educate them on various topics. And one of the topics I attended was substance abuse. And for a period of time, I was going to these events just as a school board member. But now I'm like, my oldest is getting a little bit older. And now I'm like, actually, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to, what do you have to say about preventing substance abuse in youth? Because maybe I should start thinking about this. And one of the things that the presenter noted was that to pay attention to your kids when they are transitioning school levels. So when they're going from elementary to junior high, when they're going from junior high to high school, these can be very stressful times for them, and weak points in their lives when something like substance abuse can enter into their lives. And it's just like, oh, we make kids do that 4 times between the ages of 10 and 14. And everybody loves being 11, 12, 13, and 14 years old. Notoriously the easiest ages to be.
That's why people say there's no good middle schools.
Right, exactly. No, there's no good
Everybody's a wreck.
No, right, exactly. Yeah. So we, so I would like to look at how we might be able to reconfigure our grade levels so that we can keep kids in buildings a little bit longer and minimize the number of buildings that they have to go to. But that's just me. That's just one board member. Yeah.
I mean, either it's a thing or it's not. And it comes down probably to money.
Well, I mean, and that's a big thing too, right? If, right now Mayfield is built as an intermediate building, and no matter what, if the grade levels were reconfigured, does it become an elementary school? Or does it become a junior high? And you have things you have to deal with in either of those scenarios. You need gas lines to do 8th grade science. If you're going to be in middle school, there's no gas lines in that building, for Bunsen burners and stuff. Right. And we don't have that now. Or conversely, if you're converting into an elementary school, you need ensuite toilets in your kindergarten classrooms, which we don't have we have only a few classrooms with ensuite toilets in Mayfield because right now it's only certain classrooms that need them, but generally 5th and 6th grade, everybody goes to the
hallway,
the bathroom down the hall. So there are little quirks that you'd have to consider. That would come into play, and it's really much too big of a thing to look at now. But in terms of these results coming out and really making us think about how are we really, first of all, being fair to the kids, because like I said, this is not good for kids to transition that often, but we're not really being fair to the city in terms of how our schools look compared to schools that to elementary schools and other places that go up to 5th grade.
Yeah, but so how long have you guys had these results?
Just now,
from the new system, couple weeks.
Just maybe 2 weeks, something like that.
Do you think that, like, looking at that? I mean, obviously, it changes how you think about state results because the accreditation stuff really is. I'm not going to say it's off the table, but it's not going to become what people worry about.
Right. People are going to worry about, you are now going to start seeing on Zillow.com, you're on track, off track. That's what you're going to see.
Does that, based on, and I know you haven't had, the staff probably hasn't even kind of spun anybody up on it on the board. I'm sure the staff knows a fair amount about it, but does it change like what you guys thought you were going to be doing over the next couple of years a lot? Well,
so I was actually extremely encouraged by these results, which is a strange thing to say for having 5 off-track schools. But like I said, Weems was number 1 in reading growth. Mayfield actually scored in the on-track range, but they had a subgroup that had a large achievement gap. Their students with disabilities had a large achievement gap, so they were bumped down into the off-track category. But if they resolved that issue with their students with disabilities, they were an on-track school. So that was encouraging. Baldwin got a score of 78. Hayden got a score of 77. The cutoff is 80. So these two were very close. And, Hayden improved in every category. And I mean, in every category. If you go into their school quality profile, they improved a lot last year. So it's like, okay, I want to see you at least cross that 80 threshold. Let's keep cruising. Let's go to that 90 threshold. Let's be distinguished schools. Right. Why not? But, those 3 schools, I think if they keep doing what they're doing, will soon be on-track schools, and if Weems is able to keep working and to cross that mastery threshold, even without a science exam, we're looking at the possibility of 5 on-track schools in Manassas City Public Schools, which is pretty good, I want to see 9 on-track schools, don't get me wrong, but like in terms of in terms of where we started and where we're going, another thing that is a big impact for us, that is bigger for us than it is for other places, is it used to be that if you were a recently arrived English learning student and you were taking your SOL exams, if you failed the test, your failing grade could be removed from what counted towards the school for accreditation purposes for 11 semesters, which is 5.5 years.
Wow.
That was under the previous system.
Right.
This new system, 3 semesters.
Wow.
Yes, huge.
Short on-ramp.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what the federal guidelines are. A lot of other states do 3 semesters. But that was an abrupt the light switch is on, the light switch is off.
Right.
There was no okay, well, then it's going to be 8 semesters. Now it's going to be 6. And now it's going to be 4. And no, it went from 11 semesters to 3. And even with that huge change, we have 2 on-track schools and 3 that are in striking distance. So this is something that this feels very achievable to me. And this is also, I think, a good opportunity for our schools who were further from that threshold. It's not that there are not things that are happening here in the division that are positive. There are. We just need to get everybody to be doing.
So you think your current strategies will continue to serve the division well?
Right. Well, I think
how we get better at things.
Yes. Well, and so I didn't talk about this a lot. The last time I was here, I mentioned it, but I brushed over it as technical and boring. But we can talk about it now.
Well, we don't talk about it long.
Be a little bit technical and a little bit boring. But our schools, we now have our instructional team. So if you're in an elementary school, for example, a 3rd grade team, you are now coming together as a team 2, sometimes 3 times a week, depending on the school.
Damn.
To
look at.
To share, to unpack, okay, what is it the kids are supposed to be learning? To take your assessments that you've been doing. Do we have evidence that the kids are learning it? Right. And putting everybody's heads together to be okay, we understand what needs to be taught. We have assessed the benchmark where the kids are. Okay, your class seems to be struggling a little bit. What can we, that there is this collaborative process.
So the teachers are having those meetings? Yes,
the teachers are doing it. There's an we have a dedicated facilitator for those meetings.
Correct.
And ESOL sits in those meetings. Someone from special ed sits in those meetings, and an administrator sits in those meetings to kind of guide the process and make sure that every student is getting served. I also want to, before I kind of move on and forget to mention it, our students with disabilities, you've heard me talk about it a few times in terms of, Baldwin Intermediate, it was a factor. Mayfield, it was a factor. Dean, it was a factor. Our students with disabilities have very consistently underperformed the state average for other students with disabilities in the state. And so I suggested, and the board unanimously supported, that we hire an outside auditor, basically, to go through our department and be what exactly
what's going on?
Is happening here.
Yeah.
So I am hopeful, because that was a factor for several of our schools in terms of why they were held back in a rating. And also, it's just good for the kids. We need all of our kids to be served properly.
You can't just let it sit there and rot.
No,
you find out why
we have to go. What's going on here, and how can we solve it? Because as you remember, the last time I was here, we talked about this topic again, and it's just I know it's not because the people there aren't doing what they can do their best at an individual level. There's something clearly kind of structural happening here that needs to be addressed, and we are clearly at the end of our rope in terms of how we've tried everything we can think of to do. So let's get somebody from the outside to give us a set of recommendations, and I'm hopeful that we can resolve that issue, and that more of our kids can be achieving to their
Right.
capabilities, and that will be reflected in our school results going forward. So we do have some we do have some really good things that was made clear by these results. Osborne on track, Weems number 1, Hayden and Baldwin very close, Mayfield scoring in the on track range, except for their students with disabilities. And it's looking at, and even Dean went from a 70 to a 74. So that's still,
progress.
That's a big way away from 80, but that was, Baldwin Intermediate went from 74 to 75, which was not as big of a thing. But, at the story around most of the division, most of the time, was positive momentum.
Right.
There was, but the two kind of outliers were Metz and Round, where Metz, the student achievement was, and we talked about it when I was on here last time because we had the SOL results the last time I was here.
I remember.
Yeah. So their achievement in absolute levels is still extremely low, but they didn't get put into the lowest category because their chronic absence improved, and they resolved all of their issues with all of their subgroups. And there was a third thing that Metz did well.
Attendance.
Well, let's see. Where did they? The good. Let's see. There was, how can I forget? The students taking advanced coursework. People don't realize this, but so we start to level in math, when you're in junior high. If you have the capacity in 7th grade to take Algebra 1, we will give you Algebra 1 in middle school, and you can take the Algebra 1 exam. Or maybe you're not that high, maybe you're a 7th grader and you can take 8th grade math and you can take the 8th grade exam. Or, if you're in 8th grade and you can take Algebra 1. Right. The kids who are taking that advanced coursework, they score in the 90s. They pass those tests in the 90s. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, well, of course, they're the smart, hardworking kids anyway. No. In the county, it's in the 80s. The pass rate's in the 80s. And so it's truly extraordinary at Metz that those advanced coursework kids pass at such a high level. And that really rescued them from a needs intensive support category. So even out of Metz, it wasn't. So
you used the higher performers to lift the boat.
Well, I didn't decide to do that. It's part of the readiness in the new framework. It's part of the readiness slice of category for how these results are weighted. So there's a certain amount of weight that the state gives to high performers.
These were the kind of conversations we were having when I was on the council. Was that exact phrase? Well, we can't lift the whole boat with just this small cohort.
No, we can and we will lift that whole boat. We can and we will lift the whole boat. But in terms of, there are glimmers of there was some positive news out of that. The student achievement was still too low. Let's get it going. And I hope that maybe, who knows, maybe they can be the number 1 junior high for readiness, for growth in something, the way Weems was, right? When there is a great possibility for improvement.
So when you say advanced programs there, is that just them taking higher grade maths, or is there a particular program?
I believe that this is mostly a math phenomenon. We have higher level coursework available, for in other subjects as well. You can be in honors English or integrated English, honors English, for example. But my understanding is that this, for the framework purposes, it's mostly a math phenomenon. And then, but the big news really is out around elementary school, where there was no improvement. Every year there were big backslides in basically everything. And that was there's a new principal there this year. Which might not be a surprise. But there were a lot of changes last year. And as I talked about with the new curriculum and the SOL test being harder and all this kind of stuff, and this collaborative process I'm talking about, like that's fairly new in the division too. It's not brand new,
Right.
but that's still only a few years old. And so there are some schools where that has developed very productively and is going extremely well. And you can see, and that's where like the Weems results come from.
Right,
And
right.
that's where, Mayfield storing and not, like that's where that is coming from, where that is all really coming together in a positive way. And the changes that all of those changes,
Yeah, I mean,
there's hit Round Elementary School like a ton of bricks. And the good news is that I know, Round has a tradition of excellence.
It does.
And last year was a disruptive and kind of traumatic year. This year is a new year with new leadership. And so I am hopeful. I'm always hopeful. I'm I'm an optimistic person by nature, that they can rebound quickly. But in order to do that, adjustments have to be made. And it's not just the principal that has to change. I mean, there has to be when that level of collapse when you're talking about that level of collapse, that's not just one person.
No, you got to take a hard look at it.
Everybody, even if you as an individual was a strong performer last year, okay, was I doing enough to support my colleagues who weren't? Right? Like this is something where I don't want Round to feel punished. I want Round to feel supported. Like dig in and do it, guys. The kids are counting on you.
It's the leadership's job to run towards the gunfire.
Yeah, right.
That's maybe a bad thing, but I mean that's what I always tell my guys. Like when something goes wrong here, it's my job to get in front and take the incoming.
Right.
We'll sort it out. But, I have to take the heat.
Right.
And
which
that's
is why,
kind of the way it goes.
Yeah. And, as myself as a school leader, it's like, I'm not happy that we have a bottom 5% school at all. But I'm not afraid to talk about that. I want to be careful the way I talk about it. Like I said, I don't want the school to feel punished. I don't want, I want to be measured in how I talk about it. But this is an emergency.
You've really got two different audiences, right? You've got the school. And then you've got the constituents, the parents, stuff like that. And, it's a much more nuanced message inside the school than it is going to be with the parents. And that's to be expected. I mean, parents are not experts at this.
No, well, and
they know what they know, and these are their children, but they don't.
And if you are a Round parent listening to it and you're having a good experience with the school, there's nothing the state can say about it that will change the fact that your student is having a good experience. So I don't want, please don't panic. Okay? Your student is having a good experience. There's nothing about the state results that negate that. But we have these state results tell us that there are not enough kids that are having a good experience there. Right. And that is something where I do think, as you were talking about the different audiences and what the parents want to hear and what the staff wants to hear, it's like, well, actually everybody needs to hear the same thing, which is this is not okay, and we need to do better than that. And it's not, like I said, I'm not saying this. I'm saying this to light a fire, like I was saying last time. This is the personal trainer who knows there are more reps, that you can give me more reps than what you gave me last year.
Right.
And that this is, and we got to do it fast. We have no time to waste on it, because if you...
Can you make changes like that quickly?
I mean,
you got a new principal, but that's not
nothing.
All the answer, right?
Nothing happens overnight, and it will. It has to do with how well the new curriculum got integrated into Round Elementary School, which is both a leadership question but is also a question of, well, if you're used to the old one, how much are you really bringing? How much faith are you bringing into giving the new one and following the new one? You might not want to change.
How do you get like the teachers? There's a whole different reading curriculum, you said? So they have to learn it first, right?
Yes, and they had to learn it at the same time they were teaching it last year, which was a real...
That's a problem, right?
Yeah, it's a problem, and is basically unprecedented in how Virginia has changed curricula in the past. So it was a huge lift. It's just a lift that other schools were able to navigate, and Round was not. And a big part of that is a leadership question, but a part of
can
that
be.
is also a workforce question. Like, were you willing to give something new a
Right.
chance? And it is, and it can be hard because, and I think in some ways it was harder for Round because they did have this tradition of
Right.
high performance, whereas it's like, but it's working, and I really don't want to change what I've been doing because it's been working. Well, the tests change.
Right. Right.
You know, the tests change in a way that the curriculum now supports the test, right? So yeah, even if you're old, even if the way you had been doing it was effective in a
Right.
in a prior regime, it's just changed, and that's all. And we all work for a boss. We've all got a boss, and our bosses at the state says
Your
you
boss
have to
is Glenn
change.
Youngkin, yeah.
So
Speaking of Youngkin.
so that's what we had to do. So it's not. So I think that we have a lot of talent in that building for in terms of teachers, and we have a lot of heart in that building. Like there's everybody in there loves their kids. I was just there last week. Everybody there loves their. Everybody there is passionate about the work that they do, and in some ways, I think it was a little bit of the passion that got in the way of making the adjustments. Because if you feel passionate about
The current way.
then you're going to be less willing to give the new way a chance. And I'm not saying that to target anybody. It's just it's just
people are
natural.
people.
It's just human nature.
Yeah. So have you heard anything, whole different kind of thing, ish. Have you heard anything, or has the incoming administration signaled their support for the new regimen of testing and stuff? Or
The only strong words that I have heard out of anybody coming into elective office is out of the lieutenant governor, who wants to see growth count for more, because there's growth like how well do you improve on the SOL even if you don't pass it, versus mastery, did you pass it, yes or no? And she expressed an opinion that she thinks that the mastery is counting for too much and we're not giving enough credit for growth.
is she an educator?
I think at the college level she might be.
So she has some kind of background.
Right. And there is, at the elementary level, there is kind of room for debate. Like, there's no doubt about it. By the time you're graduating high school, I need you to have mastered the content. But in elementary school, how much are you, how much should that weighting formula be? There's going to be earnest disagreement about that, which is, that's the only strong thing I've really heard. Governor Spanberg, what I have seen her say about this is that she also supports high standards, and but who
She's
knows?
got other priorities.
Yeah, I don't. So, but it is a brand new system, and I would think it would change at least a little bit. Like I said, we are. I wish there was some way to make it so that if you had a non-traditional grade configuration, we're not the only people in the state to have weird little grade level things like that. Like over in Manassas Park, they have a primary school and an elementary school, and both of those were, I forget if they were off-track or needs intensive support. I'm looking at those and I'm just like, is that true, or is that because your grade levels are split? You know what I mean? So it introduces this element of, is the problem just like a mechanical issue of how the grade is calculated, or is it because the students
Seems like there would be some way to accommodate for that.
You would think so. So I would hope that they would find some way to accommodate it. And also this, the trap that Baldwin is in, where you're improving, but you're not quite over the threshold. And is there a way to kind of capture that subtlety? I don't know. But this is way beyond my pay grade. We all work for a boss, and if it changes, it changes, and we have to adjust again. And that's just the way it is and is going to be.
What else is going on with the schools?
What else is going on with the schools? Well, now it's winter break, so everybody is, getting ready for Christmas and New Year and turning the page into 2026. This is also strange that these results have been released at this point in time because, in theory, you would like to have the entire school year to potentially digest them and make an adjustment. And now we have only half of the school year to kind of digest them and make that adjustment. And there is if you are a designated CSI school, you have only basically a limited amount of time to get out of that designation before the state
takes over.
The longer you're in it, the more severe the state consequences become.
Wow.
And which could be a state takeover, which is probably, I don't think we're ever going to get there.
I don't hear about that a lot. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. The state does secretly.
They don't want to do it.
They don't want to do it. What a hassle. They want you to fix it. Please just fix it. But it is, so that is something where I don't know how that is going to implicate finding this out now halfway through.
Right.
Because the school system, that's not something that even our administration can model, because we don't know how the other Title I elementary schools are doing in the state. Like the state has to tell us that you're in the bottom 5% or not. And so finding that out in late December,
it's tough.
Not great. And whatever timeline is associated with that, I hope that we are able still to make it and do it. But it's winter break, and I just wanted to come out here and clarify.
It's confusing. I mean, I saw, I think Suzanne put the one up that was just accredited, and then I saw others. They all said accredited, but then there was that bottom panel, and I was kind of like, I don't understand this, and I think I need to get someone on to talk about it. So thanks for coming on.
I mean, I do wish that there had been kind of because if you don't, those were from slides. I posted 2 slides,
right?
And the one you saw was only 1 slide,
right?
I wish that there had been, and I actually put it in my newsletter. I did make a little Excel chart of like accreditation and and the performance category rating. There was like a way to generate a graphic, and but our first of all, our administrators, this data became public at 2 p.m. the day we were having a 6 p.m. meeting. So they put it together.
They started drinking at 3.
With tremendous speed and agility. And so the fact that we got slides at all was a very brutal timeline for them. But it is, so that's why, and I put my newsletter out like a week later, and it's just like, what I think would be helpful for everybody to see with these 2 pieces of information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes makes the division look bad. It just does, because no one fully understands what all this stuff is going on.
Listen,
and can provide a coherent explanation, and yet everyone's like, what the hell is going on?
I know. I mean, it is, and it's so, it's hard to get it out there. It's hard. It's this whole thing, back to our theme of how hard it is to make an adjustment. And we have in our public consciousness this idea of accreditation that we've had in our heads now for a while. Right. And it's not going to be the people who don't eat, sleep, drink, and breathe school data.
It's not really approachable.
I think honestly that once everybody understands what this is, that I think it is better. I think it is better to have 4 layers instead of just 3. I think, but there are some wacky things that happen. Like you can have 2 needs intensive support schools that do better than 2 of your off track schools, for the average student, and that's a little wacky. And you can have schools that improve that don't get credit for that that don't get the label credit for improvement, but it is. I do think if we are able to be consistent now, we have this new curriculum and new all of this stuff. It's not new anymore. Right. So we have that. We're over that hurdle. It's at least not new anymore. And so the second year is bound to be better than the first year. And I think that is, so that gives me some encouragement. And as our collaborative process, the branding forward in Manassas City Public Schools is a cycle that works. As the cycle that works continues to cycle, and now that we have templates where it is really successful, I mean, I suggested to my upper level administrators, and they don't have to really listen to me if they don't want to, but it's just like, can we get the teams that are struggling with this, can you bring them on a little field trip so they can see what it looks like in the places? Because I think that there is a lack of faith in what the process can deliver if all you've known about this process is something that's not successful. So I think, but we do actually have some really astounding successes in our division with what Weems managed to do, and Osborne now being an on-track school. Can I say that for like the 5th time? Osborne is an on-track school. We have an average high school, everybody.
That's what we need. Let me ask you a question that's entirely out of your purview.
Okay.
The the chaos at the Department of Education at the federal level, has that like worked its way down to you guys?
So our budget process is going to begin in January. We start a little bit earlier than the city does. In terms of everything that we were supposed to get for this school year, we got. Like the money's in the bank there. Right. So I am not aware of any current issues. Okay, there was some question about our that Congress might have been changing various free meal eligibility things that might have imperiled our ability to provide free breakfast and lunch to all students. But because
not free.
Well, I mean, but
taxpayer supported
by federal tax dollars. So. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I pay federal tax dollars.
But there's an impression out there that there are no local funds that go towards the free breakfast and free lunch.
That's right.
So it is a federally supported program that we have historically qualified for. Right. There was a brief period of time where we might not have been, they were going to rewrite it in a way.
Summer free breakfast or something.
Yeah.
Weren't they going to cut that? And then everyone raised hell about it. And they're like, all right, fine, here's the money.
Yeah, it was something called the CEP program, like Community Eligibility Program or something like that, regarding your purchasing of how you can be reimbursed for local produce or something. That's very in the details. But they were, there was a period of time where we were at risk of being written out of that program, but that did not happen. So we can still offer free breakfast and lunch, because that would have been, if we had been written out, now it would have been a question of, do we want to use local funds to do it? Yes or no?
And it ain't cheap.
No, it would have been about $1 million, but we were not written out of the program.
That's good.
So we are still able to do that. We don't need to use our local funds to do it. The federal government is supporting that completely. But the federal government is... It's like in flux. It's changing all the time. We'll see what happens in the future, but right now that's not a current concern.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, it is good.
I mean, kids need it. $1 million is a lot of money.
$1 million for a system like us. Yeah, $1 million is a lot of money. $1 million can give everybody a 1% raise. That's like, it's not something. It's not something to be trifled with. Or 0.5% raise. Actually, I think it's $2 million for a 1% raise. I'll refresh all of this very shortly in the new year when our budget process begins.
The city doesn't. Our teachers are not part of a union.
I mean, you can.
I have friends that are intimately involved with the county situation.
Yeah,
so I never remember like which one's which.
It's the question is, you can be in a union, but there is no collective bargaining
agreement, right? Okay.
So that is you can be in whatever union.
Is that going to come back to life?
I mean, so that's something that the state might change. Yeah, that's something that would be up to the Virginia legislature and the governor as to whether or not they would want to sign something under current Virginia law. No, under current Virginia law, we have a resolution on the books saying that there will be no collective bargaining in Manassas City Public Schools. But if the law changes to say, that school boards right now school boards and local governments can decide whether or not they want to enter into a collective bargaining.
Could you guys decide to do that?
I mean, if we wanted to, yeah. Right. Okay. And there were school divisions. It was a little funny to me. There was some critique of our process, like, oh, you didn't even wait for us to give you a petition. And it's just like, well, Arlington County didn't wait either. They just said, the school board just said, we're doing it. and the superintendent drew up a collective bargaining agreement and whatever. You don't have to wait for a petition. But and so I didn't hear anything out of Arlington County. There doesn't seem to be anybody upset out of that. So, but it is so. But under current state law, the governing unit, whatever that is, a city council, a board of supervisors, a school board, can decide whether or not they want to engage in collective bargaining, yes or no. Manassas City Public Schools decided no. Everybody spoke for themselves there, but if you watch the meeting, you will see that it was a huge price tag to engage in it. And if you look around the state, it's just not going very well. Right. You know, your friends over in Prince William County, their union was taken over by their local union was taken over by the state union due to an accusation of misuse of funds. Yeah. And this is something that folks don't fully appreciate, because unions are not public entities. So
Right.
so they have to follow their own bylaws, but you can't FOIA them. There's no
Right.
public duty for them to present what they're necessarily
Spending the
doing
money.
or not doing with their membership dues. And it is a very opaque process. And the folks that are from Prince William have learned that the hard way. Actually, the Chicago's Teachers Union is under some kind of congressional investigation for a similar thing from
I
this.
mean, that's not a huge shock.
I know, Chicago. Oh my gosh. So that's not. So that, so they're under, there's some sort of pressure there
Yeah.
for a very similar kind of thing. Fairfax County Public Schools, they signed a collective bargaining agreement promising XYZ raise. The Board of Supervisors said, well, we don't have XYZ money.
I said we're not paying
And
for
we're
it.
not going to pay it. And the school division being bound by that agreement, they ended up cutting positions, including gifted and talented positions, including certain special ed positions. They made class sizes larger in order to do that. Because, Andy, there are only 3 states in this lovely United States in which we live that allows collective bargaining in public schools, but does not allow school boards to levy taxes.
Right.
Which is Virginia is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Maryland is the other, which is fine if you're Montgomery County and everybody's rolling around in all sorts of doctor salaries.
Right.
But ask Baltimore City how that's
Well,
going. Okay.
not so great.
And the third one is West Virginia. And I don't understand why anybody would support the West Virginia template for excellence in public education. No offense to the great state of West Virginia, but Mississippi's beating them now,
Yeah.
for crying out loud.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They do not have a very successful public education system over there. And because what ends up happening if you are in a situation where you cannot promise money, what you end up promising are things that are cozy and comfy for a workforce, but might not necessarily be the best for kids, because that's what you have to
Right.
to bargain with. So so in West Virginia, there's all sorts of there's all sorts of things that happen over there that hold their kids back, and I would not want that. I wouldn't, speaking just for myself, I wouldn't want it here in Virginia. I don't really understand anybody who does.
Virginia, grants of authority in Virginia are a strange thing. We're a Dillon rule state, right? Which means local governments, I mean, I'm sure you know this, but folks that listen to it might not. Local governments have only the power vested by the state and the locality. So, for instance, if Manassas said, you know what, there's too many people doing these damn podcasts in Manassas, and we're going to put $1 tax on every episode of your podcast, that is illegal in Virginia.
Yeah.
The state has to explicitly grant you that authority. It's extremely paternalistic.
Right.
And
that's kind of the funny thing, because it's like, if the state wanted to give school boards the authority to levy taxes,
they could probably do it.
They could.
Yeah.
They could. I don't know why that's not.
Well,
I mean, so collective bargaining, still, even under that scenario, I do not favor it for many other reasons. I actually have a lot of experience with collective bargaining, having grown up in Illinois and worked in New York.
Right.
But I still wouldn't favor it even under that scenario. But at least the taxpayer pays the price, and not the.
It rolls down from the top. The city council takes. I'm not speaking for the current council. I don't imagine it's a lot different, but I'm not speaking for the current council. When I was on council, the school board would show up and drop their, especially early on, they would drop their budget on the table, and if it fit under the funding agreement, Bob's your uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, later on, they pushed very hard to get rid of the funding agreement. And
which is funny, because now we want it back.
Because now you want it back. Yeah. I'm not going to say
that green
I
grass,
told you so,
that green grass over there.
but I told you so. Not you, but
yeah, not me. I didn't.
No, you weren't in office by the time I got out. But it that's very much what it was. But so what started happening though, and if you get the funding agreement back, this is going to happen to you. You'll have something extraordinary, whatever that means. We had a huge snowstorm and the roof collapsed on our school, right? And
Famous, yes.
we need an extra $10 million to fix it, whatever the hell it is. And the city council says, well, we can't have a school with a collapsed roof here. Here's a check for $10 million. So that ends up happening, but it starts happening with regularity. Suddenly, not having enough new school buses, city council problem, right?
I would like to see our budget asks be a little bit more refined. Since I've been on the board, the unfunded needs list has always been long. And it's just like, well, a long list we're not going to get. We're just never going to get a long list. And so what are we, I would like to see us be a little bit more strategic in terms of first of all, I would like to try to fund all of our, for us on the school board to find a way to move the deck chairs around on our boat a little bit more strategically, because we can't make the boat bigger. Only the city council can make the boat bigger. But be a little bit more strategic with our deck chair placement, if you will, and leave those unfunded asks to be for it to be a small but impactful list. And I think that
that's a better strategy.
Right. I think it would be. And I think that this is part of just like the human nature of us not wanting to say no because budget season starts and then everybody in the school division has their asks of us, the school board.
Sure.
We need more headcount in this department and more headcount in that department, or we need bigger salaries here. We need less of a caseload there, and this and that and this and that. And sometimes I think that we need to get a little bit better about looking at, okay, what is our caseload for our speech pathologists? Oh, they're lower than the county. Well, so the speech pathologists, not to pick on them, but they've historically appeared on our unfunded ask list. It's like, well, the caseloads are actually lower than in the county. We are well within the American Association of Speech Pathologists caseload guidelines.
Right.
And so even though, yes, I agree, I can't dispute that probably it would be even better if we could get more headcount. But the answer has to be no, because there are just, we have other things where we are falling behind, or, we have other places where we need to be strategic. And if we're taking, we just are not, I don't think, as credible as we could be institutionally if we're bringing a list of things like, oh, but you have a lower average caseload and your caseloads are in the margin of the whatever. And this is what you're asking.
My experience from the other side of the table was the question I always wanted to ask. So if it was a short, but even if it's an expensive list, if it was short, I always felt like it was much more approachable than a long list with this huge pile of money, and we need millions and millions of dollars more. My question, at least in my mind, I don't know if I ever asked it to public measure, but well, how did the schools work? Like, if you're missing so much stuff that you just can't get it done without that, but you're still educating children, right? So it's kind of like
still open, and
your speech pathologist thing. And so it was always a question of, look, what's nice to have? What do you gotta have, right? The collapsed roof.
Where are we really? Where are we really, really lagging? And what is it? We have the public writ large does not trust Manassas City public schools. What is impacting that trust? What's impacting our results delivery? What's what is impactful that we can go through? I mean, I remember when I first got on the board, I was shocked that there were only 3 social workers in Manassas City public schools. But now I've come to learn that social workers interact with the school counselors, who interact with the school psychologists. It's really a whole matrix of responsibilities and support. And you have the family liaison position too that does a lot of, did you know this this is the Department of Social Services phone number and stuff like that, that are supportive in that way as well. So it's just okay, well, now I see the fuller picture, and there can maybe still be a deficit there, but is it but where do you target? Is it because we are not paying school psychologists enough, and actually we need to give we need to give a raise there because we're carrying vacancies there because we're not being competitive, where it's not so much the head count and the social work, you know what I mean? And that's just something where that kind of evolves with that has definitely evolved with time for me. Like I said, when I first got on the board, it's like, no, we can't have 3. We need to have 4. We need to have 1 in every school. And now I understand, like, oh, no, this is actually a more complicated
it always is.
web of support. And that if there is a deficit somewhere in terms of how our students are being served in that way, is it headcount, or can it be something, or is it something else?
Yeah.
And I don't know if we get to go through it all again. Budget season is is right here, right around the corner. And we get to, and this is a fun budget season because we have the outgoing governor who's done his budget, which is the budget we work with. We always work with the governor's budget because that's just how the timeline works. But I just have a feeling and that's not going to be
changes
the budget that we're going to have by the end of this process. So it's going to be a real ride.
Yeah. I budget season's the worst.
Yeah. Well, I think I have fewer departments to work with than you did at the city level. So,
and when I was first
and I don't have a
elected,
Great Recession to navigate.
Well, there is that.
So
but
that.
The worst part was always the first 2 years that I was on the council, because we did an in the weeds budget, line item budget, and it was a nightmare because I felt like, why am I? And I probably told you this example before. Why am I critiquing the number of bullets that the police are buying?
Yeah, right.
What the hell do I know about
how much bread do they buy at Hayden? I don't know, enough to feed the kids. I trust you're not,
I trust that the chief of police has it, and he buys just the bullets that he needs, and they're not selling bullets out of the back of the police station.
They're not throwing away whole loaves of bread, right? That you've got some idea of what you need or not.
It's still always difficult. And, Doug Waldron, when he was mayor, is like, basically his take on the budget was it's just an expression of your priorities.
Right.
And he's right.
Yeah.
Doug's a smart dude.
Right.
And that early on, that especially helped guide me kind of like, yeah, that's about right. Because at that time we had a lot more trouble with the police. Not that the police were a problem, but we were not competitive in our salaries and stuff. And so we had a lot of turnover, and that is a problem because you need more experienced guys on the street.
We have the same pressure
helping, right.
with our teachers.
But, the feds kept hiring our guys and we can't compete with them.
Well, this is also, kind of going back a little bit to collective bargaining. The incentive for us to keep up with pay is already there.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. We already have to. We already have to do the best that we can because we are a small system. We're not a market setting system. We're chasing the market all the time. We're chasing the market, and yet we are still in the market. We still need to. We still need to hire. And we still need to retain.
Yeah. Other guys, you lose guys to Fairfax or whatever.
And so, in terms of, are your incentives aligned to supporting your workforce? Like I would argue, those incentives are already there because we already are surrounded by these much larger jurisdictions that can eat our lunch.
Yeah.
And that, if anything, all of them going into collective bargaining agreements is like, okay, well, now we know what they're not going to surprise us every budget cycle.
Well, there's that.
You sign it usually on a 3-year cycle. It's just like, okay, so we have to contemplate this many, this percentage raise over there if we want to stay competitive with them and stay competitive with them. So if anything, it will make our, having it surrounding us will make our jobs now a little bit more
plan for it.
Predictable.
Yeah.
And so because we are already, I shouldn't say we, I am already interested and keenly invested in making sure that we keep and retain good teachers.
You have to.
That's already baked into the pie. There's another thing he said that I was going to elaborate on, but I forget what it was. Talking about the police and selling bullets and all that expression of priorities. I'm going to ask you a question. If you had to say what was Manassas City Public Schools' number one priority, what would you say it was?
Performance.
Close. It's student academic success.
What? Okay.
Oh, technically it is. But
I'll go with that.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, there's
I was just curious to hear what your,
there's nothing else.
yeah, there's nothing else.
Literally, I mean, that having decent school buildings, decent being whatever your scale, that's table stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Having classes in IT, having classes and some of these more CTE kinds of things, that's table stakes. It's expected. Well, maybe not Princeton, but they have the school out here. They have like a culinary program, right? They've got Colgan. It's got a pool in it that's the size of Niagara Falls or something.
Well, we use that pool.
Well, right, but that's table stakes.
Yeah.
That's what you're competing against.
Yeah.
Now, I think I've thought for a long time we have a smaller system. We have maybe some unique opportunities that we could leverage that a system like the county can't. But, we still have and will continue to have, I think, for some amount of time, this core issue of, what did you call it? Not performance.
Student academic success.
That.
Yes.
That's the number one priority, because like before we were chatting before we started recording, if the city had an unqualified average school system, just where all of the schools make all of the
we're all on track and fully
we're all on track, and maybe a couple of laggards that are off track,
right.
And the school system otherwise qualifies all the stuff for accreditation. I think that the city, the price of living in the city would go up.
Yeah,
and by a fair amount.
And I think we are in a striking distance. Like if we keep up, if we are not afraid to embrace new ways of doing things, the places that have done it have shown the success. Like we have good results. This was, I said in my newsletter, it's a mixed picture. It is a mixed picture, but it's mixed because there were good results out of that.
Right.
And, even the 3 out of the 5 that were off track were so close. We're so close, just 2 or 3 points away from that on track designation. It's just like, I don't want, my fear with all that coming out was that people would become discouraged in our buildings. Like, gosh, we've done all of this and we've done so well and we're off track anyway. It's just like.
So if you asked like what I think that their top priority should be, it should be performance. And the number 2 challenge you have is communications.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no different at the city. Communicating, public institutions communicating, because you don't have a newspaper. Mm-hmm. You got a handful of board members, got a handful of city council members, you got a mayor, you got a chair, who can all be communicating different things.
Well, that's what I mean. Like this
right?
And I have on the bottom of my newsletter a little disclaimer that goes out with every single one. And I've actually made the same disclaimer here with you several times. My opinions are mine alone. This is me. And this is not an official statement on behalf of anybody else.
And that should never stop. That's a good thing. But there needs to be a comprehensive and forward-leaning approach into communicating those things. Because one of the things I asked you the first time you came on, I was like, well, what's the plan?
What's the plan? Yes.
And then I read the strategic plan, and I thought that it's a strategic plan. Strategic plans they're notoriously difficult to action.
Yes.
Right. And so, whether at Matrix, at my business, school board, I don't care where you are, unless you have a big organization with someone who's responsible for institutional advancement like that, it's hard, but it's crucial, because otherwise, their average Joe on the street, he's going with whatever he read on, Facebook or any of these other things about, the city schools are basically a pit and it's never going to get any better.
Right. I mean,
now all of a sudden we have these new results. It's kind of like, well, wait a minute. Yeah. We've got some movement. We've got some ish, right? Yeah, we've got some movement. There's problems. Yeah. But we also have some green shoots here.
Yeah.
So I think that that comms part is extremely difficult.
Yes. And I would like us to see, and I think it goes to our trust deficit as well, that we don't have we actually had a parent write into us as a school board being like, I'm trying to follow what you guys are doing, but I don't see any school board recaps. For a period of time we were doing them, but that fell off at some point. So it's a few months old. We haven't had a school board recap sent out.
You should be in charge of it. You have a recap about twice a day.
But it's my, but it's
Right,
me. It's not a recap from the school.
But it's a good model.
Right. And be like, well, or I look at your calendar and what's a regular meeting? What's a work session? What's a joint meeting? Which one do I need to go to? Which one should I watch? I can't come to them all. Which ones how am I supposed to find this out? And I appreciate it when people don't get discouraged, and take that time to offer that feedback and be like, how am I supposed to know? And it's just like, well, here's my newsletter, that I do. And, other board members do other things that, the other board members have more Facebook followers than I do, for example, and they do more with video and stuff like that than I do. Everybody does their own different things, but everybody does them also. All 7 members do it 7 different ways and on behalf of their own selves. But in terms of, how Manassas City Public Schools communicates in general, I would like to see, I think that I think the city is already prone to distrust the schools because of the historic results that have come out of the schools, right?
Yeah.
And you hear for the first time out of nowhere, Osborne's on track. Well, who are you saying that? I don't really trust you saying that, because everything I've heard for so long is that Osborne is not an on-track high school. And even good news doesn't take root in people's minds because there's not enough of a consistent message out there. And so actually one thing that is coming up for us is to speak of outside audits, we did get an outside audit of our communication practices. And so we will shortly be getting a...
Wow.
Do
you have PR people?
We have a communications department of basically 2.5 people. It's very, very small. And I think, and it's been that head count for decades, for 20 years. And that department handles not just our outward communications. First of all, outward communications has changed a lot. It is now like 6 different social media platforms. When this communication department was formed with this head count, it was basically just email. You know what I mean? And paper letters. So the style, the nature of communication has changed. That department also handles our FOIA requests. It also handles and supervises all of our translation services, which is no small thing to do at all. And it's so it's a huge job, and I think that we need to strategically readdress that department in terms of is it structured in the correct way so that we are doing so people are hearing from us enough to know.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you have to be, the leadership has to be intentional about that. When we hired full-time communications people on the city side, the opposition was, we're just putting out happy news. I mean, which is not entirely incorrect, but previously we were putting out none.
Right. So let's put out something.
People didn't know anything about anything. HMI, or early on, I don't think they do much of this anymore. I could be wrong. I don't know. But, they helped with some stuff, especially on social media. But as the years have gone by, I feel like the city comms have gotten a little stale. It's more, here's a new company that's moving into town, which is important. But, let's talk. Why can't we have somebody in elected office talk about the budget? I mean, municipal and school budgets are impenetrable if you're just, average Joe, right? I can bust them open, read them, look at them, and I'm like, well, here's the problem right here. Well, but if you don't have any experience with that, it's impossible.
No, I mean, and it is actually in our budget process and how I think our budget process has become clearer and more transparent just even on my time, and not giving myself credit for it, but our finance department, I think, has seen that need and has addressed that need. I heard this year we're going to get binders for the first time in terms of, kind of more similar to what you do on the city side, so that you can really so we as board members can really sit with everything together. Don't
you have it electronically?
I mean, we do, yes, but, I'm looking forward to personally to having like that nice hard copy. But I'm an elder millennial who's So maybe that's just me, but we've had one pagers that we've put out in our more recent past. Our budget presentations have gotten clearer in terms of
that's good.
what was and what is now and what's proposed and,
Yeah.
superintendent's proposed and school board markup and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think that process has gotten a lot clearer.
Yeah.
And I am, so that I really like, is that gives,
Well, that's good. I'm talking about like the stuff, like if you have a question and it's, October, like, what does the school spend on pencils? I'm going to go look at the budget and it's like, oh my God, I can't even.
That's school-based, Andy. How much is I would have to go into each school's budget to determine who spends what on pencils. And some schools have the parents buy their own pencils. So it's so if you want to ask me a simple question about how many pencils
There's
we
never
buy,
a simple
let me
answer.
tell you. Like, there you go.
There's never a simple answer.
That's what you get.
There's never a simple answer. Budgeting is tough. And the other thing is there's so many. There's a lot of, I think, and more so on the school side than the city side. You get money from a lot of different pots, and some percentage of it is always required to go to some different part of the solution. Where on the city side, we have a little bit of that. There's probably much more now, but we just have the general fund, and we decide where all that money goes. So.
I mean, we do have inputs from, our federal government money is only going towards the things that the federal government is funding. And, the food money is only allowed to be spent on food. People don't realize this, but the food budget is self-contained. Like, it sustains itself in terms of its reimbursements and all that other kind of stuff. It is, it's kind of its own animal, which is in the budget, but out. So it's in the budget, but out of the budget at the same time. If that is Schrodinger's budget. Schrodinger's budget. And, in terms of what your operating versus your everyone's favorite topic, the fund balance. But it's anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. The next time I come on your podcast,
all right.
Andy, I'll talk.
Well, I think we've about killed it.
Yeah, I think we did. This was a long time.
Yeah.
We talked a long time.
It's almost 5:00.
Okay. Yeah. I'll talk all day.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Sarah. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.